tron diomar seo agus tro Microsoft Teams. Den cíneach go bhfuil na microfóna ac an da chud Teams agus na fónich an waibach. Ha se bheith céisteach se net hengecha agus go bhfuil se bhir son blian cuidah ag microfón, cuidah microfón ag mas táisiach sin ar mé chorlich dulcreiten ar treudachuch le fach golúri.
Ik raas voor sin tord tank ut er wat in seo sure son gach togel haar bulige hoorn tankel son gwisiner kruin kommunichele tank ut gewer sin komme socher wie torcharver schuut as een oja seo wie naar rugkeren son naar koisnokken sin tot tank ut er son nurum a hakin as verjoin commission kainocher sin gachwa gerurum a haun as gewer sin janu sharvash utse Sin taigol ég ras for son gatlestens hau hakin a washo as gymich naar kujochus naar misnochus as gymich gymich sturig nigelig en akin a washos naar kamal suas as gachtois krem suas ar niech karoch sa nier niech karoch gemiti gymich kumaru as in hofrikin gymich en kamal suas kujos bjanich as gacht lesten as a haks has in tankler son stillen son jobes hauer tort gaif chimicho in een nichen has in jespet has in kuju gymich bjanich kainoch a koinsnochen has in rukkig fuga Eilean gymich kumari gach dachis gach jobog sin tankler yes son na codamens son sochen en hau tort gain gachwa As son gymysyn yn y sio, ffyrwch as na helen yn y sio, as yn gwylio gymysyn syrfach eich lein, as gach ni gys social, economicoch, as gys spiritual, gymysyn chyn yn y wad o chwa, as gymysyn as y janw pris o'r gain, as gach as son gach nech. Sy'n gwylio gymysyn cainwch eich gach nech a ffeimach ost y was sio niw. Ymwydwch dachis tjawachs, leis na nítin ac yma dyrf na'n siochin. Sa sy'n gwylio gymich o cwmwri. Sy'n gwylio son ar carrig yn hun ag yn aim o sio sy'n cainwch eich rhagonisio Ian McNeil eis eich hywach a haws cawn bron a ys cai ag na hamna sio i'r ader cael mac. A sy'n gwylio gymich o cwmwri, gymich o carach suas yn crioch yn brisdiac. Ag na haim o sio. Bianich yng nghwrnisio Eilean cwjo gymich o cwmwri sy'n taigol son yn ordas a genw na wantio sa sy'n gwylio gymich o cwmwri sy'n siarfog. Ys ymwydwch dyniela ha ffeim y chost ag na haim o sio gymich o cwmwri. Bianich sy'n ys bydd o hosioch o'r nas na glesnas yn hakins yng nghnioch ys a harwn ag na haim o sio. Ys hwnnw'n sa'r pec nes cach rias. Amen.
Dag blad gáil. Chuniú nes go chláireg. An na dain bhí stiúing na chuniú chuin na lenas na ar cuine. Ma ha sibh nar bailtin chometí agus sa fríalucht tro computer fácah ar camera éid agus ar microfón Ma ha officiid na fríalucht tro computer fácah an dáchut mar ilse bheith blian di aasc nó a ficust kist. Chuidin an gine bhúil agus officiid an go bhfuil system féú san deomar, has mach ag an chariche in a max. Ha mac a chiad duine a féú a búilsge gúine agus bí an gáróine an stad. An ói a lickas an gariche stoi mac áriche a mac go dearag. Cha bhí ach da mac dearag ag am sa bí. Ma ha se bhar son tiile go kist fa go bhar mac éid agus ma ha officiid in a bíon di aasc chorlichin edef an úrút a dhéanú. Het pianvachas a horsta bhúil a chometí. An na dain bhí cláir agú I féimi búil an deomarácal nó cíocha chuid éisteach far a bhilsef. Het cusbar a hundí a gálik didig na cúniú agus buchórta bhúil a chometí agus na hoficiid in imimechaí fuideach agus dhéorin I luch compáirstéile a chuniú ágal. Chuin cuiteach na scríine go bhfuil a chuidiú I a chláirech agus bí a éidir chláirech lín na Comhairle a stiúin na cúniú. Nes mistóisiigh sin bhheile minute gáil gus cuinecha a dhéanú i chailhór a an gálacha inéirtí Comhairle i dúló clipás dúlaich an sa déolach aice. As leis sinúla an seo a mír son comhaidheachcin a staine a chuid ice héin agus go héolach ag an am go dhéobh seo. Big fis aice go bhfuil smóin cóladis agus go bhfuil sin an seo gus taich córs gá an a dóir san bí a dhéime sé. Nes glóise sin neist chuna chiad chuspar i chláir agus sin gearchúnta san na cúniú i thógilá den dhearan 2024 agus sin son úndachach. Siú gúndachach? Tachbalh. Dala cuspar gearchúntas na cúniú i thógilá fichad den dhearan 2024 agus sin son úndachach cuiteach, siú gúndachach. Tachbalh. Dres cuspar gearchúntas cúniú haitan sa seachgalaíon dhearan 2024 sa sin son fisracha. Gera cuspar chláir a új, me ha új ag bail anna cuspar san bí chláirúpach bechórgah sinna chláirach, ag a fiú mar le níisiú buil an over a bhfuil a chláir a új sa cuspar. Anil daine chláir a új. Léha, glóise sin neist chuna thógiú cuspar a chláir ceall digitach. Now, Shagop Bean Seville, move on to presentation, digital connectivity presentation by Scottish Government, the Digital and Compliance Manager, Broadband Delivery at Scottish Government, Duncan Nisbet. And I think, Duncan, you have control of the presentation yourself online, so I hope that works for you. And welcome anyway to this meeting of the committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, and Martin Va. Thank you, first of all, to Callum Mackenzie for the invitation to come and speak to you at today's committee. But that comes with an apology as well, because obviously I'm online to do this presentation. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come up on this occasion. However, I do want to make sure that I make a commitment that for a future committee meeting, I'd be more than delighted to come in person again. I think it makes sense as well to bring our contractors to a future meeting where we can talk about the actual build from some of the programmes that I'm going to talk about today. So what we'll do is I'll run through some slides and then more than happy to open up to questions from the committee at the end of that presentation. So I guess I do need to speak a little bit about policy, so I'll do this a bit as quickly as possible. Just a reminder for the committee that the legal and regulatory powers and telecommunications sits with the UK government. However, that doesn't prevent the Scottish government from making investments into this area, and indeed we have already done so and continue to do so. So there's been over £1 billion already spent of public funding in Scotland, particularly benefiting our rural and island communities in terms of digital connectivity. There's over 1 million properties that have benefited from programmes over the years, and I'll give a little bit of history on that. Kind of more up to date from our National Strategic Economic Transformation, it sets out the ambition to provide kind of efficient, resilient digital infrastructure, and it will continue to invest in that infrastructure. And I think a key is that from the joint digital strategy with COSLA is the principle of no one left behind. And that's really important because it should mean that there should be no barrier to getting online and benefiting from digital technology, no matter what the geography, background or ability in order to do that. And that's the commitment from Scottish Government. And obviously we want to ensure that Scotland receives its fair share of Project Gigabit, which is a new initiative from UK Government, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as well. We're obviously really keen to make sure that we can maximise funding from that for Scotland that takes account obviously of the more challenging nature of the delivery of digital infrastructure in Scotland. So just kind of the three kind of key areas, I guess, in terms of digital infrastructure at the moment. We've got the continued delivery of the R100 contracts, and I'll give you an update on that. As I mentioned, we've now got Project Gigabit in Scotland as well, and we're working really closely with colleagues at UK Government on how we delivered that. And from a mobile perspective, we did have the Scottish 4G infill programme that is now complete and included 55 masts across Scotland, 4 of them across Eilean Shire. And that is, as I say, is completed. In terms of the kind of ongoing work then from the R100 programme, we're obviously just getting onto Eilean Shire at the moment and starting that survey work and the build work just now, so I'll give you an update on that. Important to remember as well, though, that the R100 programme and indeed Project Gigabit programmes are utilising the subsea infrastructure which was delivered as part of the Digital Scotland Superfast Broadband programme from a few years ago. So each programme is really building on the one that went before it, and we're reusing that infrastructure and enhancing that infrastructure to provide improved services. In terms of Project Gigabit, we have awarded our first contract in Scotland. That's covering the borders in East Lothian, and I'll tell you a little bit more about future projects as well. And moving on in terms of mobile, we now have the Shared Rural Network, which is obviously a UK initiative that continues to deploy and understand that the first publicly funded mast was actually built and is now live on South Uist. So in terms of broadband improvements, I mentioned the kind of history of the different programmes. So I'm sure many of the committee will remember the Digital Scotland Superfast Broadband programme, which targeted properties below 24 megabits per second. That was a delivery of core fibre infrastructure across Scotland, including subsea connectivity, serving premises mainly through what's called a fibre to the cabinet solution, which built fibre closer to properties, but still went to the kind of green street cabinets that I'm sure you're aware of, and delivered speeds of up to 80 megabits per second. Now, the biggest restriction with that particular technology was that the further you were from that street cabinet, the lower the speed you could get till you got to the point where actually you got no benefit at all. And that's a major challenge across the rural and island authorities in Scotland. We did get some limited full fibre. That's where we build a fibre infrastructure all the way to the individual property. And at that time, it was offering speeds of up to 330 megabits per second. The R100 programme, the reason that came about is the DSSB programme was a UK government initiative, but was delivered in Scotland by a combination of Scottish Government and Highlands and Islands Enterprise. So the money was fixed by UK government, and in fact, the rules in terms of how we could spend that money were fixed as well. The ambition was to deliver 95% coverage in the whole of the UK, and that was achieved. However, within Scotland, it was lower than 95%. It was about 93% we got to. So the R100 programme came about because there was no plans at that time from UK government to do anything to try and fill that gap. So what started off as an SNP manifesto commitment, but eventually coming into the programme for government, was the R100 programme, which was there to try and fill that gap that was left over from the DSSB programme. That again targeted properties below 24 megabits per second, and that was through a combination of contract and vouchers. There's also the biggest element of that is commercial build. A large part of my role is working with commercial operators throughout Scotland, not only to try and understand where their future plans are and where their current build is, but also to try and encourage them to build more, because ultimately the more that the commercial operators build, the less we have to spend public money on. Now, in terms of the R100 contract build across Eilean Shire, that will all be gigabit capable. It will all be full fibre that's delivered as part of that contract, and that's now able to provide speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second, or 1,600 megabits per second. So we can see that the speeds are rising somewhat exponentially from the starting point of DSSB, where we didn't have any properties above 24 megabits per second across islands at that time. Now, Project Gigabit, that's a more recent UK government initiative that I'll tell you a little bit more about in a couple of slides. And that's targeting properties that are below 500 megabits per second, which in effect means that it will target everything across Eilean Shire other than those that are already connected to full fibre. And everything that's delivered as part of that programme is gigabit capable. Now, if you look at the history, then you can see the graph on the left there is showing the kind of speeds that are available across Eilean Shire And you can see that up until kind of late 2014, there was no super fast speeds at that time, and that's really when the DSSB programme started to deliver. And you can see that then steadily increased till about 2019 when that programme came to an end, and it has since plateaued at that point. The figures on the right, that really just breaks down some of the numbers at the various different categories. So you can see there, super fast, although I speak about 24 megabits per second a lot, that was the UK government definition of super fast originally. That's now been revised up to 30 megabits per second. So around 80% of the islands at the moment are able to order a service of at least 30 megabits per second. If we look at the full fibre connectivity, though, at the moment, it's only 7%. So I did mention that that was limited delivery from the DSSB contract. So you can see where that gap then lies in terms of the challenge then for R100 delivery, but also then Project Gigabit delivery to follow. I think it's worth focusing as well on the 10 megabits per second and down. We've got almost 12% of properties that see speeds of below 10 megabits per second. So the UK government, they have a legal universal service obligation in place. So it means that anyone who's in that bracket has a legal right to request a service. It doesn't unfortunately mean that you're entitled to a service. You can only request a service, and it will depend on the costs that are associated with that. And certainly I've seen examples across the country of some quite eye-watering figures of how much it would cost to meet the ambition of that USO. It has delivered across Scotland, don't get me wrong, but it is quite challenging in terms of getting built into some of our rural and island communities. If we look at our R100 contracts then, so we split the country effectively into three, north, central and south, and our three contracts are delivering. I'm sure members will be aware that we had a delay to the north contract starting due to a legal challenge, which unfortunately meant that it started a year later than the other contracts. But across the three contracts now, we've got over 78,000 properties that have benefited across Scotland. We've got 4,500 properties across 38 islands so far, and clearly many more to come. Our broadband voucher scheme, we've got over 5,000 properties that have benefited from that. Within the North contract, there's just over 2,200 properties that are in the current plan for an Eilean Shire. When it actually comes to delivery, we always look to try and maximise the build that we're doing when we get to somewhere. So I would hope that we'll actually deliver more than that, but that is the number that is in the contract. In terms of survey, the way it works is we do detailed survey work first of all, and we look at those surveys and then move into build. So there's around 300 properties that have already passed the survey stage, all within the Stornoway Exchange area. The first properties have actually gone live on the airport road, which is great to see. And I would expect that the majority of those 300 will go live before the school holidays. The summer school's holidays, I should really clarify that. One of the key things that we're able to do in Stornoway is members might be aware that Openreach are also delivering commercial build within the town itself. So this is, I mentioned earlier, we're trying to get the commercial operators to go as far as possible. So they're upgrading the Stornoway properties commercially, while R100 is building around the town. So what we're able to do by delivering it at the same time, it gives us some efficiencies in that build, which hopefully means we can then extend build further. The survey work is continuing over other parts of Lewis at the moment, and as we start to see those surveys come through, hopefully we'll be able to then update the information we have on our website to give a more accurate timescale as to when we expect deliveries to come. But there is another flying ointment or an opportunity, depending on how you look at it, that I'll tell you about in a moment or two. So just in terms of those kind of 2,200 properties that I mentioned, that's where they all are across the islands. So council officers have got access to this information through a portal that we've developed for local authorities, and can see where all of these individual properties are. And also the information on these also flows through to the online checker on the Scottish Government website, which is available for the public as well. Now, I mentioned Project Gigabit as an initiative from UK government. So this is where UK government have a commitment to deliver gigabit capable broadband to near 100% is how they describe it, or sometimes it's 99% plus of UK properties by 2030. And that's real key there. Again, it's a UK-wide target of 99%. It's not 99% of Scotland. It's not 99% of individual local authorities. It's a target for 99% of the UK. Now that's been delivered through a mixture of local, regional and national contracts, plus there is then a gigabit broadband voucher scheme. It very much complements exactly what we're doing with the R100 contracts right now. In fact, what we're doing with R100 contracts, we're probably going to properties that Project Gigabit might not have made it to anyway, but the infrastructure that we're putting in place as part of those contracts can be reused as part of Project Gigabit, which should hopefully mean that we can maximise coverage out of those contracts as far as we possibly can across the whole of Scotland. Now, the way it's been delivered is local and regional procurement and delivery activity is managed by the Scottish Government in Scotland. So that's very similar to the approach that we took with the Digital Scotland Supervised Broadband Programme, whereas the national contract has been procured by UK Government, but we're looking to manage that in Scotland in partnership with our colleagues at BD UK. They mentioned that the first contract's already been awarded for Borders in East Lothian, £26.2 million covering 11,000 properties. The remaining contracts that we have then, we can see them on the map that I've got there. So the A and B contracts there, they effectively the local and regional contracts that Scottish Government are managing. Number 1 there is already awarded, 4, 5 and 6 are all in procurement at the moment, and 2 and in fact 3, which form part of 2, we're going to fold that into the Type C, which is the national contract. Now, although the national contract itself has been awarded, there's then call-off contracts which the UK Government put in place for specific geographies, and that is ongoing at the moment for Scotland, although we'd anticipate that there'll be a contract announcement on that very, very soon. The overall contract is awarded to Openreach, so it will be Openreach that's carrying out the build. And there's further details to follow on that. Now, the reason that that's really important is it means that obviously we're just starting our R100 contract build across the Eilean Shire at the moment. We're then going to have Project Gigabit build as well. To give you an idea in terms of numbers, we've got the kind of 2,200 premises under the R100 contract. Still to be confirmed once we get the contract announcement, but I expect that the Project Gigabit build will surpass the R100 contracts in terms of numbers, because a lot of what they'll be doing is overbuilding the fibre to the cabinet areas. So I would expect that number-wise, it's going to be even higher, but we should see that confirmed once the contract is announced. And as I say, I expect UK Government to announce that very, very soon. In terms of how members of the public can get access to information, we've revised our website, but we've got that online presence there. The main difference that we've done is we've actually brought a lot of digital connectivity together into one place. So you can see there it covers broadband, mobile, Internet of Things, green data centres, and any other news that's happening on that. It still includes the online checker where you can put in your address details, and it will then provide information on what you've got. At the moment, that's still restricted to Superfast and the R100 contract. But what we're doing at the moment is we've got a development activity to then update that, ready for when we get the Project Gigabit contract information and build, so that we can give that whole suite of information to members of the public. And I think that will be really, really important. And the last slide I've got is really to just talk about what it means to you, to the council, to your residents. Obviously, when we build, particularly on islands, although not just islands, it's the actual logistics of that build. It is a lot of infrastructure that we're building, so that presents a number of challenges. There's a lot of plant materials required to build this network, so we have to obviously get that onto the islands in the first place. We also have to identify suitable, safe site compounds for the storage of the plant materials during the works themselves. And across the islands, I would expect that this work, particularly if you then factor in the Project Gigabit work, will pretty much be taking place between now and 2030. So it's an extensive period of time for a lot of this work to be undertaken. Well, what we always do is we try and maximise use of local subcontractors and workforce wherever we can. It makes sense to do that. The local knowledge is invaluable when it comes to actually building these networks. But it also helps one of the other challenges that we've got, which is accommodation for the workforce. If we're going somewhere where we have to bring the workforce in, we have to accommodate them somewhere. Invariably, we're trying to build in the summer months as much as possible because it's just better for building infrastructure. But of course, accommodation is at a premium in the summer months across our islands. I mentioned before that we'll try and maximise build as far as possible each location. We don't want to be sending work crews out to build in an area to then go away to have to come back in 6 months' time and do some more work. We would want to maximise the build as far as we possibly can whilst we're actually there. But I think the key message is there will be disruption, and there has to be disruption when we've got build of this magnitude. It tends to be localised disruption to road users, and obviously Openreach and their contractors will be working really closely with the roads department in terms of noticing and traffic management. Generally, it's a much bigger challenge in the islands, mainly because the fact that there's so many single track roads, and often if we do close a single track road, either the diversion is enormous or there simply is no diversion, and that's one of the challenges that we have, and something that obviously we're keen with our contractors to talk through with the colleagues within the roads department to ensure that we're trying to minimise that disruption as far as possible, but also allowing the infrastructure to be built. And that's all I had in terms of slides. I've got my contact details on there. I'm more than happy to take questions now, or if members wanted to contact me offline, that would be very welcome as well.
Thank you very much for that, Duncan. Pretty comprehensive run through, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, so open it to questions. Orman?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Thanks, Duncan, for the presentation. I'm sure we're all looking forward to wondering what the hell a gigabyte is and what we're going to do with it. I think I've got enough megabytes to power just about everything I've got in my house. I've got a decent connection. I know that a lot of properties still don't have a good connection to basic broadband, struggling for speeds. And we keep talking about working from home and connectivity, and you emphasize the fact that it's a right, a legal obligation, and they can request it, but depending on cost, they might not get it. You also said 5,000 properties are benefiting from the voucher scheme. What does benefiting mean? Does that mean they qualify for the voucher scheme and then they have to go and look to see about another provider? Or when you say benefiting, are they able to access internet provision via Starlink or something else? Is benefiting just basically they qualify for the voucher scheme, or do they actually have access to purchase the online availability that they're looking for? Again, we're talking at 99% of the UK. Now, 50% of the 1% that's left are in Eilean and Siar. We're talking about the same people we've been talking about for the last 4, 5, 6, 8 years, however long I've been in this Comhairle, that still don't have access to basic fibre broadband or a decent connectivity for their online service. You know, the aspirations to give everybody a gigabit are great, fantastic. I can only presume that business is the only thing that's going to benefit from that amount of speed and that amount of downloadability. But again, as long as the cost is your hurdle for providing broadband to outlying areas of the Western Isles, this is going to go on and on and on. Doesn't matter how many voucher schemes and how many other things that you provide. Basic rights now, like water, electricity, etc. We're talking now about broadband. You mentioned it's a legal obligation. But if that hurdle is always going to be cost, then we're never going to get beyond that particular impediment to broadband in outlying areas, because it's going to cost money. Now, I don't know, do we have, or is there any way round the fact that depending on how much it's going to cost, you will not be able to provide it, and you just say the voucher scheme and they can go online and they can download off a satellite? Or will there ever be a provision for these people who do not get decent access to their broadband? Will it be provided on a terrestrial service, on a line or a fibre cable? I mean, this is the be all and end all for these people, because they just don't have a decent connection, and sometimes the line isn't running too far away from their properties, and they still can't get connected because of the cost. And again, if cost is going to be the impediment, then we're going to be stuck in this particular loop. And the figures look great, 99% of the UK. But like I say, if of the 1% that's left, 50% of them are going to be in Eilean and Siar, then we're going to continue to go round the houses here.
Can you leave your light on, Norman, in case you want to come back? There's a number of points there, Duncan. I hope you got them all.
I think so. I mean, I'll go through what I've picked up, but please do come back to me if I'm missing anything out. So initially on the vouchers, the 5,000 benefits, so that's 5,000 properties that have received a connection as a result of using the vouchers across Scotland. I'll be absolutely honest with you, we haven't had a huge uptake across the Eilean Shire in terms of the vouchers, and part of that is we have a real challenge in getting voucher providers that want to build infrastructure on islands. From their perspective, they obviously have to maintain anything that they build, and if that means that they have to travel longer distances to maintain that, it ups their costs, so it has an impact. We do have some coverage on islands from voucher build, but it's not as high as what it is in some other parts of the country. And in terms of the voucher build, the actual solutions themselves, I mean, we're always technology neutral in terms of what we invest in. It's all about, as you say, getting that improved connectivity wherever that address happens to be. So there's about 25% of those vouchers it's been a full fibre solution that's been delivered, but we've got a mixture of solutions, including traditional satellite connections, low Earth orbit satellite, and also using the 4G phone network. One of the good things with both S4GI and the SRN actually improving 4G connectivity is we can use that 4G network to improve connectivity in the home as well. I absolutely agree with you that cost is the hurdle when we try and look at that final 1%. It's something, as I'm sure you can imagine, we're in dialogue with colleagues at UK Government about that, because as soon as we've seen it was a 99% target for the UK, we knew that the majority of the 1% would be in Scotland. It's not hard to work that out, and it's something that we're working with on them. UK Government were looking at different initiatives and have had some consultations on what they describe as the very hard to reach premises. Although there's been a number of reports on that, there's no definitive conclusion as yet. And again, that's something that we're working with colleagues at UK Government to try and understand what needs to happen with that, what happens next. Low Earth orbit satellite is seen probably as being a great solution, and it is a great technical solution. In all honesty, in terms of what it can deliver, in theory, it should be able to deliver to anywhere. It's not gigabit speeds, but it's ultra fast speeds at the moment. But it is expensive. If members aren't aware, the standard connectivity for a Starlink service, for example, is £75 per month. Now we don't have Starlink as part of our voucher scheme because £75 a month actually breaches our monthly limit for any solutions that come through the vouchers, but we're doing some work as well to try and understand what does the future look like for low Earth orbit. Starlink is the main player right now, we're all aware of that. There are other providers that are also starting to look at consumer products that are available, but it's all emerging. It's not there now, it's not available yet. It's something that's coming in the next kind of year or two, so we're tracking that to see what it is. On the universal service obligation, I completely agree with you on that. I think I can't remember the figure off my top of my head, it's about £3,500 I think. So in effect, if you request a service and Openreach can't connect you within that limit, they'll give you what the difference is, and they'll still offer to build it for you if the homeowner's willing to pay the difference. But as I mentioned, I've seen some cases where that difference has been over £100,000, and that's just not going to happen. It's Ofcom that administered the USO on behalf of UK Government, and they have been consulting recently and are doing a review of the USO. It remains to be seen what changes might come forward from that review, but it is under review, which is a good thing. But we'll have to wait and see what the outcome of that review is. And hopefully that's covered all your points, but please do come back if I've missed anything.
Norman, has he
No,
missed anything?
thanks, Duncan. I know it's a particularly testing environment in some of the rural areas here, to provide it at below the cost that you outlined there of £3,500. It's not a great deal. And like you said, it's possibly in excess of £100,000 to connect some of the smaller rural areas. Another thing I was looking at here, and it probably does take some explaining. The map for Project Gigabit in Scotland, I see Orkney and Shetland are separate, which is fine. But the rest of Scotland seems to take in just about everything else. I mean, there are the peripheral areas here, Dundee, Aberdeen and Moray, Fife, Perth and Canostra, Fries and Galloway, and the Lothians there. And the rest of Scotland is a massive area. Can you explain the logic behind the map?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I should have mentioned actually for all of our intervention programmes is we take the most urban premises out of scope. So we don't allow our programmes to look at the cities in effect. We take all of them out because we want to make sure that we're pushing connectivity into the more rural areas. When we looked at Project Gigabit, what we had to do is we also go through a series of meetings with the market themselves to try and understand what the market would respond to. There's no point us going out to a procurement for a certain area if actually nobody's going to respond to that tender. So what we've done is we came up with a kind of rough design. In fact, we split the country into six areas initially, and then we started rounds of meetings with the market. So this is all the big players across the UK and Europe, to be fair, that are building infrastructure that were interested in bidding for basically public subsidised contracts. And slowly but surely we'll whittle that down into manageable areas. I mentioned that we have two different types. Well, there's three different types. There's the local contracts, which are effectively those for roughly up to about 10,000 premises. Then our regional contracts, which are up to about 150,000 as a maximum. And then everything beyond that goes into the national one, which is the Type C contract. Ultimately, where we got to is we've only had a single Type A contract that we had enough market interest to put out to procurement, and that is lot 1, which has now been awarded. Those other ones are Type B contracts. Now, the Orkney and Shetland one is very interesting in that from a size perspective, it should be a Type A contract, but it requires extra subsidy because of the size of it. But the only reason we've got a contract that's covering Orkney and Shetland is because we had interest from the market that wanted to build network in that area. Interesting, I had lot 2 was still marked on that map, I think, which is effectively Dumfries and Galloway. Initially, we had 2 Type A's there, which were lots 2 and 3. The market didn't want that. They wanted a single Type B, so we converted it into a single Type B. But at our final market engagement, it became apparent that actually it was too high risk for the market. They weren't prepared to commit to it. So that's the reason that that's now dropped out, and we'll fold that into Type C once the contract's awarded as well. So really, we're driven by the market. We only want to go out to procurement where we've got a level of confidence that we'll get a compliant and successful bid to build that contract. So that's the reason that we've got so few contracts other than the kind of national Type C.
Yeah. Thanks again, Duncan. Before I stress what I was stressed earlier on, do we have a figure for the number of houses that are still without a decent broadband connection? You mentioned £70 a month for the Starlink contract was beyond the budget. £3,500 would not connect the majority of households in some of the areas because it was going to be £100,000 to get them connected, etc. For the relatively small, in general terms, number of people, particularly in the Western Isles, who cannot get the broadband that they're looking for, would there be any leeway in the amount of money that you could subsidize them to get them connected, even if it does partially make up for Elon Musk losing 70% of his Tesla sales? It probably won't fill that gap. We're talking about a very small amount of money here. I mean, has that been investigated? Could it be, I mean, what would the general cost be overall per year to give everybody that can't get connected just now and will have no prospect of getting connected because nobody's interested in providing it through the voucher scheme or through any other scheme? How much would that cost a year if it's between a couple of hundred houses or maybe a couple of thousand houses? We're not talking a huge amount of properties here that are still in that 1% or 2% or 3% that cannot get connected. Do you have a figure roughly of how much it would cost to get them connected via a satellite link?
So I don't have I don't have a figure in front of me right now. I mean, one of the pieces of work that I'm undertaking, so I mentioned earlier that one of my responsibilities is working with commercial operators, understanding what their current and future plans are. That means that I've also got the best view of Scotland as a whole in seeing that for every single property. So we track about 3 million properties on a weekly basis. And what we're doing is we're looking at, okay, which are the properties that the commercial operators say that they've either built or they're going to build, which are the ones that are in our various contracts, whether it be the R100 contracts or the gigabit contracts. And ultimately we can then say, okay, where are the ones that are left? Where is the, we'll call them the 1%, but it's going to be more than 1% likely. So what we're tracking that at the moment, but what I need to do is wait until the contracts are all awarded, because then I know how far the contracts are going to go. And once we know that, we'll then know what the gap is that's left. So just to give you an indication of timescales, the gigabit contracts, the A&B contracts, they will all be awarded this year. I mentioned that the Type C contract, I'm expecting an announcement on that very, very soon. And we should then get the data that sits behind that contract as well. So that will allow us to then do the analysis to work out exactly what that gap is, and I'll be able to break that down at local authority level or whichever level that's required. So we don't have it right now, but it is absolutely something that we're working on and that we will have in the very near future.
Thanks, Duncan, for all your answers. Thanks very much for the comprehensive overview as well. Thank you.
And thank you, Norman, for all the questions as well. Anybody else? Check. Who's first? Norman?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee. Thank you, Duncan, for your report. One of my wards is in Uig on the west side of Burnra, of Lewis, and Great Burnra got fibre to the door in 2018. Now, Uig was supposed to get it straight after that. I didn't, and it obviously because of COVID coming in, it might have stopped it. But they don't have any broadband at all up there, and the masts they've got aren't very reliable. The 4G is off maybe for 2 weeks at a time. So I was just wondering do you know when they will get the broadband or if they're getting it?
Did you catch that, Duncan?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
So I've actually done some work with the community before, and weirdly in similar circumstances, I was due to attend a public meeting in Uig, and I got as far as the runway at Edinburgh Airport when the flight got cancelled, so I didn't make it there in person. But weirdly, we did an online meeting, which I absolutely understand the irony of doing that. But we've been working with the community, so that there's a couple of things in that. So one, I think my understanding is that from the DSSB contract days, when there was some fibre done, what happened is at the end of that contract, there was an opportunity to do some additional build. But ultimately, it didn't get as far as they hoped it would. It was obviously Highlands and Islands Enterprise that were managing that specific contract. That's, as I understand it, why Uig wasn't connected at that time. It is, however, very much part of that 100 programme, and we're expecting some contract build out there just now. I understand I did speak to colleagues at OpenReach yesterday just to see where their survey teams are, and I believe they're out at Timsbury just now, so hopefully they're not too far away. And we'll see some survey work going into there, but there is certainly fibre planned for the Uig community.
Are you happy with that
Happy
response?
with that, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Donald Crichton gave me a letter this morning. He had written on the 11th of December 2022, and there's a response from Ivan McKee, and it's in relation to R100 programme in Uig. Yeah. That's a long time ago, and no progress has been made. So, yeah.
Thank you, Duncan.
Okay, Mustafa, make sure you keep your light on afterwards, because you usually have several questions.
I'm not going to come back. Just a small clarification. Thanks you very much, Duncan. It's just in terms of the commercial private providers on the voucher scheme, is there like a minimum standard or quality standard that require? I'm talking because in our area, there are some villages that can't be accessed, and when the voucher scheme was advertised, I've seen few people saying to the areas, if you club together and comes all the money, I'll provide you, and then nothing comes out of it. So is there a minimum requirement in terms of quality standard that a commercial provider will have to guarantee?
So yeah, so in order for a supplier to get onto the schemes that where they go through an application process and they have to give us detail on them as a company first and foremost, but also list any of the solutions that they would propose to provide as part of the voucher scheme. That's then assessed by our team to determine if it can genuinely deliver an improvement in broadband services. Ultimately, they should be able to order a deliver of service of at least 30 megabits per second. It doesn't quite meet the same technical criteria that we do for subsidised schemes through contracts, which is very, very technical in terms of the requirements. But what it does do, it's more of a general, it's an uplift in speeds. It can get to 30 megabits per second as a minimum, and that's what we'd look at. You're right in terms of the way that the voucher scheme works is there can be individuals that just look for a single solution for themselves, and that would tend to be the likes of a 4G or a satellite connection. At the end of the day, it's unlikely to be anything different. Or communities can effectively club together the voucher value, but they still have to find a supplier on the scheme that's willing to look at that. And we've had a few different ones. Interestingly, we've had some real good success stories, and there's some of those are available on the website. We've got some case studies in there showing where it's worked really, really well. But we have had instances where we've had suppliers really keen to actually build in some fairly rural areas. But then there's other barriers come into play in terms of how they can get the backhaul to that site in the first place. The irony is that what R100's doing is it's pushing fibre out much, much further. And what some of the suppliers are saying to us, until the fibre gets out closer to where they want to build premises using vouchers, they can't get the backhaul link for the network that they would want to build locally. So they're almost waiting for some of the R100 build to come before they can then offer additional services. So there is a little bit of a time in there, and it is a challenge. But certainly, yes, communities can bring all the vouchers together. And what happens is that it's the voucher supplier themselves that put forward a project bid to our team, and they'll say, okay, here's all the properties that are eligible for vouchers. This is the total value of those vouchers. This is the how much we think it will cost to build this network and to deliver that network. And then we'll do some analysis on that and decide whether we want to approve that or not.
Thanks very much. Is there a way of like building an accreditation scheme or something for like certain providers in areas where they go through a rigorous that will know that they'll deliver what they say to whoever? Because if somebody used their voucher scheme, or for a community use their voucher scheme, that's probably could be used by, you've got your entitlement. We delivered our commitment. And if the quality is not good, the quality is not good. So it's just.
Yes, I mean that accreditation should take part as part of onboarding the supplier onto the scheme in the first place. We do carry out quality checks once solutions have been put in place. We've got an independent technical evaluator that goes out. I mean, they don't check every single property, but they do go out and check against a number of different suppliers. Really, to me, as an audit purpose, to make sure that they have actually delivered the infrastructure they said they were going to deliver, and also that they're able to deliver the speeds that they said they were able to deliver.
Thanks very much.
Are you finished, Mustafa?
Thank you, Chair.
Just the two, okay. Leader.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Duncan, for the presentation. My question was going to be about the properties. You mentioned 2,206, I think it was, for the Western Isles. In the past, when we've seen the map's really interesting. I'm going to come to Cala just to get a bit more detail on some of the properties. But in the past, we've seen houses that were classed as hard to reach, that were literally between two houses that had broadband. So, there were questions at that time about, the classification of these houses. So my question was going to be, are these properties that are classed as hard to reach going to remain classed as hard to reach, or is there, I think you mentioned there's survey work happening. I think it would be beneficial to identify some of these places and to assure them that they will be within scope. I try not to get too personal, but where I live in Lashgar, we're just the wrong side of a cabinet, and we're down for June 2028 for broadband. You mentioned to Councillor MacDonald earlier on that the Starlink price at £75 a month was too dear. I did a quick search on BT just now. So for me to get 30 megabytes download speed, which is including the 4G home broadband, is £75 a month. So that's the price that I would be paying if I wanted 30 megabyte speed with my current connection on the copper. So I'm just wondering, what is the limit on that as well? So a couple of brief questions, but yeah, hard to reach classification was my concern, because it was an issue last time.
Keep your light on. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. So I guess to cover some of the property issues that you might have, one of the challenges we have is that when we baselined our 100 contracts, that was now a few years ago. So invariably properties change in that time, new properties spring up and things that we didn't know about at that time. So we have the 100 contracts, they're because there's public money involved, those were procured compliant with European state aid legislation. So although we're not in the European Union any longer, so our Project Gigabit contracts are under UK subsidy control legislation, but we still adhere to state aid for the R100 contracts because that's what was in place at the time that we procured them. So that kind of sometimes has a limit on whether or not we can add additional premises into the contract. But if we are passing premises, like I think the example you gave was a property that was between two that are in the contract, I mean, it's almost certain that we would connect that whilst we're passing it anyway. I say we, it would be Openreach's responsibility at that time. We can't force them to connect it because it's not in the contract, but they would connect it anyway because invariably it will be connected off the same infrastructure that they're building anyway. So that's the part where I mentioned before that as part of the survey work that we do and then part of the build, we'll always try and maximise build wherever possible. So that's partly filling in gaps and partly extending a little bit further. The one other thing that it's worth mentioning on that is I mentioned obviously that when the Project Gigabit Type C contract gets announced, as I say, very, very soon, we'll see then kind of significant build coming across Ireland for that. Now, it's Openreach that's going to be doing both of that. So similar to what we're doing in Stornoway just now, where we've aligned the build for R100 alongside the commercial build. That gives us efficiencies from Openreach's perspective, which means that we should ultimately be able to save a little bit of money by doing that. We don't want any money back. When we save money, we just inject it straight back into the contract to extend build. So we're able to do that in Stornoway between the commercial build and the R100 build. What we're exploring at the moment with UK government is when we're in the position where we've got Openreach and contractors on site building R100 contracts, and then you've got a slightly different bit of Openreach with slightly different contractors also across the islands building Project Gigabit build. Let's try and align that as far as we can so that we can drive efficiencies from that as far as we can. The upside is we should get more coverage as a result of doing that. So we've got less gaps. The downside to that is that we will probably have, if we go down that line, we would probably have to revisit timelines that we'd previously published, simply because of the fact we're trying to align two contracts together wherever possible. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is drive efficiency and increase coverage. But as I say, we're having those conversations with UK government just now. There's no conclusions or anything at the moment, but certainly when we get to the point where we've hopefully got some conclusions, I'd like to come back to committee again to talk through what that is, and I'd be delighted to do that in person. In terms of the voucher limit, I'm just trying to check online for you at the moment exactly what it is. So the limit that we use for the monthly payments for suppliers from vouchers, we use it as what's set by Ofcom themselves for the USO. Now it's just gone up, which is the reason that I haven't got the figure off the top of my head, because what they do is it goes up every year based on inflation. But what I'll do is I'm more than happy to share that following the meeting. I'll get detail on that and pass it over.
That's great. One final question, if that's okay. The shared rural network, obviously there's a new mast, or a few new masts that have gone up in years. You mentioned them in your report. I don't think it's supporting all networks, despite being classed as shared. There's an opportunity to share, but I don't know if that sharing option has been taken up by all networks. So if you could give us a bit of an update on that, and also I think Misty touched on it a wee while ago, the 4G masts are going down an awful lot recently. There was a bit of a promise when the emergency service contract was put in place, and I know that they do still have access to, there's a certain amount of bandwidth that's kept aside for them, but there does seem to be an awful lot of coverage dropping out across the islands. I don't know if other members want to come in on specifics in their areas, and I'm not adding to your workload here and sharing it, but it is something that I hear quite a lot, and it is a concern when people are relying on that as their digital connectivity for health appointments and for business, etc. So just there's more for an awareness and also a couple of questions there. Thanks. I'll leave it on.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm going to start with an apology because I have to confess my speciality is more on the fixed broadband side rather than on the mobile side, but I'm happy to take questions back to our mobile colleagues. Obviously, shared rural networks very much a UK government initiative, so we're not directly involved in that, but we can probably get you some contacts within the SRN team who would be able to give you any specific updates. And I am aware, I think most of the meetings where I go in any rural areas, there's problems in terms of masts and things going down. I mean, I live in a rural area myself, and anytime we've got power cuts, everything cuts out, the masts go down. They usually stay up for about 10 minutes before they disappear as well, but they go down too. So it's certainly a problem that we're aware of, but let me take that one away and I'll speak to both SG mobile colleagues as well as colleagues at SRN.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks, Susan.
happy. Anybody else? Gordon Murray, you had a question yesterday at committee on R100. No. Nobody else? You're all happy? Yeah. Okay, Duncan, thank you very much. A very comprehensive run through, and thank you for your time. And we'll certainly take you up on visiting Stornoway and presenting to committee in the near future. But thanks very much for that.
You're very welcome, and I look forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, Clóis na neist go cuspra Siar planich an gnáchais an déilevis agus chláirí an connarst gan nópaid. Tá nás seo siad gúnta na Comhairle le planich an gnáchais an déilevis agus chláirí an connarst gan nópaid. Tá bhí le cóca rícha tíadichid. San is dúlachan a hún co cóctíag den fascíh ga agus dúlachan a húntaigh te fascíh trí a ha grách na comedy seo agus bríní calmachchan is an áis agus fictí tistan san bí.
Thank you, Chair. The business plan in front of you, there's quite a lot of information in it, and I don't intend to go through every aspect of it. However, happy to take questions on certain areas. Maybe just as an overview, some of the challenges ahead of us in the year ahead. Obviously, we have budgetary control issues, managing the amount of investment we need in our services and resources, and indeed our infrastructure with the resources that we have. That's always been a challenge for us, and I think members are well aware of these as well. On top of that, the areas, the topical areas coming forward just now, we just heard about digital connectivity. Tim Langley and I are leading a transformation project on digital innovation for the Comhairle. So that's just starting just now, and looking at what are the main areas we should be looking at, and if there are any quick wins that we can start working on in terms of digital innovation. The other area that's very topical just now is that of climate change and climate change impact. We had a very fruitful meeting with Scottish Government colleagues in the flood risk team recently, we were highlighting the main issues that we see emerging in Uist and Barra. And really the picture is very complex going forward. There are coastal issues just now. There are flooding issues just now. And if they're predicted to be greater in the future, we need to be prepared for them. Coastal adaptation and climate adaptation is quite a large subject area, but it's something that we're grappling to get a hold on and getting as much advice, expertise from other areas as we can as well. So for me, going forward, there's always the budgetary issues, but looking at digital transformation and looking at preparing for climate change impacts, these are some of the key areas we hope to be progressing in the next year. So happy to take any questions on that or any other aspects of the business plan.
Mustafa?
Just a quick question, Carla, when you said about you and them looking at the digital connectivity and things, obviously we're having some problems with the coverage for smart meters to replace RTS meters and things like that. Is that part of what you're looking at in different areas?
Not that level of detail. The smart meters are very useful in actually helping understand where your consumption is for various utilities. So keeping a better track on our consumption for various aspects is something that we tend to do anyway. We were quite successful as well in a recent project looking at our water utilities and what we're paying for them, and managed to make some significant savings there. We hope to do something similar with electricity as well when the new framework contract emerges for that. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, Mr.
Yeah. Okay. It just like obviously we all know that some of the RTS meter that need to be replaced in some areas are getting replaced with smart meters, but the smart meters don't work because there's no connectivity for them. So I'm just looking to see if that's one of the things you're looking at.
RTS, no. I think we will just assist with communication to the customers.
Okay.
It's really between the customers and the providers to deal with the RTS issue. Smart meters and communications, I think again that'll probably be improving as connectivity improves, but they use a different network to 3G or 4G for that connectivity. But again, it's very, very specific to properties and the coverage in the area.
Thanks, Carl.
Norman?
Thanks again, Chair. Norman McDonald-Skeeter, I'm not a member of your committee. I don't know if this is the right section of this to ask this particular question, but it might be to do with your business plans. There was recently a 20-mile-an-hour limit imposed at Castlebay, and I know that there were plans mentioned before, possibly a year ago, to make a one-way system around Stornoway and, coming in through Bayhead and I think back out through Matheson Road, etc. I think there was money available through a particular scheme to make the town centre a little bit less traffic and more pedestrian orientated. Before various blood pressures go through the roof and this gets imposed upon us. Can I ask, will we be kept in the loop all the way along before we get the chance to actually see what's been proposed? Has it been advanced any further? Where are we with it? And again, will we have the chance to look at it before it gets foisted upon us?
Okay, yeah. I could all the same.
On the 20th, there was a report that came to committee and approved 4 schemes for 20-mile-an-hour limit. So they've been implemented rather than imposed. So the first one to be implemented was in Castlebay. So we're looking at the next implementation phase being the east side of Stornoway, east of Matheson.
Where was this? When?
Committee report?
We agreed to this.
Yes.
Fewn gwydwch.
Haro,
Fewn.
Bolle.
So there were 4 areas where there was an agreement to follow the process to put 20 mile an hour limits in areas in Stornoway, in Castle Bay, in Tarbert, and in Balvannig. And these are in the process of being implemented just now. When you mention the rest of these issues or proposals for Stornoway, it was very much at a discussion stage. Various people in the chamber have mentioned a one-way system as being a potential positive development. We did look at what that would look at in a bit more detail, and we discussed with some of the Stornoway Forum. I think we took that to the, not to the forum, but the Stornoway Traders Association. So there's various feedback on that, and really at this stage there wasn't that much positive coming out of implementing a one-way system because of various considerations. One of the things we would like to do, though, is look more about areas where pedestrians frequently walk on crossroads and what improvements we could do there. So if you consider just now where the tourists get dropped off from the coaches, is there a way that we can make that a bit more pedestrian friendly? You know, even looking at if you get people from the continent, America, coming off cruise liners, they'll tend to look left for a vehicle rather than right. So looking at more pedestrian friendly measures, but nothing so far as advanced as a one-way system. And that would definitely come to members and for consideration. It would certainly go to whatever forums we have, the Stornoway Traders Forum, the Stornoway Area Forum, to discuss these measures.
Yeah, I think we did mention going through Cromwell Street and around the schools and the hospitals, etc., which is fine. I'm not nothing against that whatsoever. Look, thanks, Gavin.
That's okay. Thank you.
Democracy ar it. Johnny.
Abelat. Thanks, Councillor MacDonald, for mentioning again the possibility of having a one-way system in Stornoway. I had that care when I first asked for this to be done.
Ceist dyna sy'n byd chi?
Diolch cyfadad order, mae'n hard o ddyn nhw. Order sydd cosgwysyn lwydrych am ei cymad ar eisiau bleth car ac roed yn drast a cymigolaeth wel corydd ffesgig coed mil agos coed hiad not agos as yn y cymad an yn gwaith blion neu yn bia. Ni dde fa geisi hiad yn slwyn asyn, dim yn har, dod y gianw sy'n.
These targets can be quite misleading at some stages. When you look at some of these KPIs, you would say that we're top of the table in Scotland as far as spend on roads maintenance is concerned, because we're spending less per kilometre than anybody else. That is because of our budgetary restrictions, not because of the requirement. So the other targets you look at are related to the percentage of each class of road that would require maintenance in future years. We have very little control over that, although where we do exercise control is in our prioritisation of where road maintenance is undertaken. So you'll probably have seen that most of the focus can be on A-class roads, which means that the C-class and unclassified roads can then deteriorate a bit quicker. So we're very, very restricted with the funds that we have, and we do the best with them. So although we put targets against them, these targets are really for discussion. And when we don't meet the targets, then it's usually to do with the availability of budget. So I don't know if that fully answers your questions, Duncan, Councillor McInnes.
Kate Tollicht to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. The amount of money we have available for our roads is a serious problem for us, and particularly in light of the future developments that are coming to us. I have been long enough on the call to remember when the first meeting of the year as transportation was a meeting where capital monies were allocated to doing stretches of roads in the Outer Hebrides, but in particular, the spinal route was always the top of the list to try and complete the spinal route. We've never ever done that, and it would still be an aspiration of this committee, I'm sure. I am personally of the view, and I've said this before, that we really need to have an allocation of resources to this council to work on our roads before anything major happens in these islands, in particular the roads that are going to lead from where turbines are shipped to the place where the turbines are then to be raised. Do you agree?
We've raised this in a briefing for Scottish Government in relation to major developments, because as far as the roads are concerned, we've raised an issue that we're concerned that the amount of heavy transport and traffic on them is going to cause deterioration in the surface, but also there's the requirement for the investment in what you refer to as the routes that these components will be taking. So we need to understand a lot more about volumes of traffic, movements of construction materials, and indeed this comes into quite a lot of detail per component, because we need to assess a specific trailer against a specific route. So whether it's the horizontal alignment of the road, vertical alignment, or indeed the capacity of roads and bridges. So there's going to be a lot of work involved in that assessment, but critically is the preservation of our own transport system, of our roads network, of its condition, and indeed our road users during this construction work. We heard as well in the presentation from Scottish Government on the digital rollout that they intend over this period to have significant construction and investment undertaken here, and they're having the same problems with transportation of materials and accommodation. So this is a common theme that we're seeing from the major developers as well. So I don't know if that's a long way of saying I agree to your comments, Councillor McCall.
It seems to me, Chair, that Carla does agree with me. It's something that really deeply concerns me, actually, because our roads, as we know, they're not based on solid foundations, and the weight that we're going to place upon them, I don't think our current roads can actually handle that. And I have one experience that I mentioned, I think, before in committee. When we were building the turbines at Bangrejak, we thought the best route would be to take them through Marybank. So we asked the department if we could do that. And Donald McRae said to us, yes, but you'll first of all have to rebuild the road, because he did not think that the road would be able to would be capable of carrying the turbines we have. Now, the turbines that we have are just tiny little turbines compared with the ones that they're going to build out beside Bangrejak. So I think it's a serious problem for us, and something that, in my view, must be resolved in advance, as you are suggesting, Carla, in advance of anybody coming here to do anything. Thank you, Chair.
Never rune de cabinet is on call and at least this va cora a command sec cannast harles and last offices. Ye to make a late rotens sin barach innavis ein son opidien o in roten. Han listen son on last offices on tatera to make a late hora of a
Only in the broadest sense, Chair, that this forms part of our long iterated arguments about island proofing of the Scottish budget, and that is really what would make the fundamental difference to this. As you've said, we had a cordial meeting with the Cabinet Secretary for Transport about trunk roads and regionally significant routes such as the Spinal route. And we recognise the financial constraints on everyone, but as has been noted on many occasions, the real issue is how the funding formula is calculated, and in the absence of that changing, and we all know the political issues around that, some of which would be favourable to us and some of which would not be, there really needs to be island proofing of national budgets, and that is part of the work that we intend to take forward in the course of this year and next, and which forms part of the report to Policy and Resources Committee this afternoon. But without that, nothing will fundamentally change unless we are fortunate in future years through the funding formula. But that does not seem a likely prospect, or capital allocations are diverted more towards local authorities than they currently are. Sorry, I can't be more optimistic, but I think that is the assessment. That at the end of the day, it is about choice and about prioritisation. Thank you, Chair.
Tag Blacht. Kistik de
Thank you.
Well, I'll let him go.
Staffa. Angus News.
Thank you, Chair. Just while we're on roads, I mean, the problem we have with the roads is imminent. It's all very well to say the heavy haulage from future contracts, which is going to worsen the project, but we've had a lot of heavy haulage on the Lochs Road in the last while with SSEN poles and various things. The condition of that road, I can honestly say in the last probably 5 months, 6 months, is deteriorated rapidly. Nearly every day from Cameron Terrace to Ballalan, you see some deterioration in the road. And I'm not just talking about small potholes, I'm talking about parts of the road that are actually crumbling. They're actually beginning to subside and give way. There's going to be a massive investment required fairly soon on that, and we just don't have the capital to do it. It is a serious issue. It's going to get worse, but that stretch of road particularly. And we've got side roads even around the town in our own communities. We've got Grimshatter Road, we've got the Ranish Road as well in our own ward. But the main road is actually crumbling away, and I fear if it carries on at the rate of deterioration it's at just now, another few months and cars are going to be, we could end up in serious problems if the road starts crumbling the way it is. And I think we need to look at it.
Come me Solis.
I think you're right, Councillor Morrison. We are starting to see significant investment in infrastructure here in the Western Isles, which for that route between Eashkin and Tolsta and Stornoway and Barvas is going to see some significant construction traffic on it. And you're right, it started just now and it will start to ramp up as well. So it is very important that we do keep track of the condition of these roads. We've got some good monitoring equipment now that simply by driving the roads we can pick up the road condition. We tend to do that once a year across the whole of the network, but I would start saying that from now on we should maybe look at these roads that we know are getting heavily trafficked and do a survey more often on them. The difficulty will be on funding, but by monitoring, we'll be able to keep a better idea and to be able to highlight some issues before they arrive, hopefully. But again, I think unless you've got a pot of money there to be able to go and do the work, then the difficulty we will possibly find is that these roads will deteriorate before we can do anything with them. So I'm agreeing with your observation. What we can do if we don't have the money to fix is another matter.
I'd like to commend the team as well, your roads team, that when you do report an issue, and I mean not just a small pothole, but a big pothole, they're very quick to respond to it. But the problem is a wee shovel of tar is only for a few days and then it opens it up again. But I would like your engineers, and I have raised this, I would like your engineers to go over and revisit that stretch of road where particularly, I would say, a third of the carriageway is breaking away in 3 places, particularly in that stretch of road. We've got all the corners at Sowell where the heavy lorries are turning, and obviously when the lorries are turning round, they're breaking that road up as they're going along. It is of serious concern, and I think we could end up with a problem as a council if we end up with claims coming in if there's damages to cars shortly, if we don't do something about it. I know it's difficult, we don't have the money, but we have to try and get money from somewhere. Whether it's from these developers or whoever, before they actually start the work, that they put some money into the council to do the roads. And I agree with Councillor McCormack, what he said. We do need to look at that structure of all these roads where that heavy haulage is starting. But it's not what's starting in 6 months, 2 years. It's what started already. So that's my concern.
We do have a difficulty with being able to get money from developers, especially when there's multiple developers using the same roads. If there are abnormal loads or abnormal traffic, we can usually catch that at the planning stage and put in some kind of agreement. But really, our only means seems to be through the Road Scotland Act from that point of view. But retrieving money has been notoriously difficult. But the point's taken. We'll keep an eye on that section of the Road Council.
One more comment, if I could. Is there a weight restriction on the main roads here, or how are these lorries, are they actually monitored the weight they're carrying? Because I was behind a lorry a few weeks ago, and you think it was a sea that was moving in front of you with the road, the weight that was on it.
I'll probably have to come back to you on this one. The vehicles themselves are rated. So like an HGV would be 45 tons. So that would be the weight limit for that vehicle. If anything is over that, it's classed as an abnormal load, and then would have to go through a process of discussion and with the roads team, who would then assess whether the road is capable of taking that load, whether it's weight or whether it's length or width. So anything that's classed as an abnormal load needs a specialist means of approval before it can travel on it. So a general load such as you're maybe referring to wouldn't be classed as an abnormal load and is permitted to, within the capability of the vehicle itself, to travel on any of our roads, unless the road is weight restricted, and none of our main roads are.
Mustafa.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think my clarification question was around the same theme as what Angus, Councillor Morrison was asking for. And is there a way of entering into an agreement with any contractor when we know that any project will involve heavy traffic and heavy loads in certain road before they get damaged? I mean, we see that in our area where the direction of the spaceport and different things. I think Cal has already answered that. So it was just around the same thing. So
what we tend to do is prior to, well, if we know there's going to be a major construction project involving transportation along our road network, we would tend to do a pre-construction survey, agree that with the contractor, and then do a post-construction survey and agree for any remedial works to be undertaken. But we don't really have a lot of powers when it comes to getting financial compensation for that. Contractors may help with some minor repairs, but if it comes into a total overlay, then the argument that's always passed back to us is that, well, there are many other people using this road as well. So I think Councillor McCormack mentioned as well that a lot of our roads are founded on peat and are generally going to degrade with heavy traffic. So the point is taken, the point is noted.
Yeah.
It's how we can actually prepare ourselves and manage ourselves through this period of construction. We will be discussing this as an issue at the Major Developers Forum with all the developers to see if we can come to a common consensus, because it's in all of our interest to maintain the roads at a good and passable standard. And certainly at the end of all this construction, we don't want to be in a position of detriment.
Yeah, thanks. It's because obviously the effect or the damage of it, you see it sometimes miles and miles away from the project itself because the traffic comes. So it's not easy to just pinpoint it to the developer and say this is your damage. So although we know because where the traffic comes, but yeah, thanks very much.
Francis.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, and this is not at all an area of expertise, and I might be talking absolute nonsense, so I'll just preface my comments with that beforehand. Is there a way we can turn this on its head, and instead of asking for compensation afterwards, ask to provide something beforehand? And again, this is just something I heard from a couple of areas in Scotland where councils have purchased a thing called a Pothole Pro, which is an operation, a large-scale operation, which has this machinery called the Pothole Pro, and a driver and a tipper and a trailer and a four-person, and they're a kind of squad, a hit squad, and they go out to areas where there is a pothole or potholes. The council leader I was speaking to gave costs for it. It's delivering both capital and revenue budget streams, and they're very happy for anybody to go and have a look at it in Midlothian, which I know is a much smaller, more obviously they don't have the travel distances involved there, but I don't know if that's something that, the large companies could be asked to contribute to this before as part of the conditions, rather than waiting till afterwards.
Well, we are going to raise the matter at the Major Developers Forum and have that initial discussion. The concern is the quantum of damage could be considerable, and we could ask for things up front, and that may help, but it may not go anywhere near what the ultimate damages could be. In terms of equipment, we've tried various things over the years here, and we've found now bits of plant that do work well up here. We do have a jet patcher, which again it can deal with a certain type of pothole and road defect. We also now have 2 road menders, which create a very neat repair on larger areas. So we've been using a road mender in Lewis and Harris for a couple of years now. We've purchased another one which will now go down to Barra in advance of some major surface dressing work there. So our maintenance team have quite a good handle on what works. Some of these bits of machinery you talk about are yes, probably useful for where they are, and if they're used 100% of the time, are probably of benefit. But they are very, very pricey to buy. We can certainly have a discussion with the contacts that you're mentioning to see how they're getting on, to see if we can learn from them. But the 2 aspects of your question there, yes, we'll work with developers to see what agreements we can get in advance, but there is a concern that the issue will be greater afterwards, and how we deal with that is a major concern.
Yeah, I think my point, which wasn't very well made, was wasn't instead of, it was as well as, that they should be, providing something up front, but that wouldn't take away any culpability afterwards that could be found. So that you get them at both ends of the process. Yeah.
Is Bill.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to what Councillor Morrison was talking about, the potholes, and I've spoken to Callum about it on a numerous amount of occasions. I'm sure he's fed up of me asking about potholes in the point area, but it's something that keeps reoccurring all the time and in certain places. It seems to be around the certain same areas. And again, I agree with Councillor Morrison. These these holes are fixed, and maybe a week later, that the tar comes out and we have the same problem again. And again, they have to be fixed the same places. Could we not, is it not more cost effective to put hot tar in these holes and to make a proper job, well, as best a job as we can in the first instance, rather than going back and back and back to repair them over and over again? I know it's not easy. I know money's tight. But sometimes I feel maybe if we spent a wee bit more than the first instance, then we won't have to keep going back to the same place all the time. The other thing, observation I have is there's quite a lot of chip and spray done last year. I think it was last year, and I know the weather didn't help, but some of it didn't last. I don't know, 2 months. I'm talking about maybe Mackenzie Avenue, the road to the Melbourne Road to the airport, and the beacon, as they call it, from Park End down to the road end up to the airport. I don't know what the plans are this year. Are we doing chip and spray again? If we are, I hope it's going to be of a better, that's going to last longer than what we had last year in some areas. I don't know. The weather could have affected it. I'm not sure, but it certainly didn't do the job, because that it's actually still coming off. The road's in a mess with chips. But my main point is, if we could do these patches, these bottles with hot tar from the word go, then we wouldn't have to keep going back to them over and over again.
The weather has a huge effect on the road surface and condition, and also with the repairs that we actually do to them. So if it's wet, generally what I'm saying is, if you have a pothole, it needs to be prepared, cut out 2 edges, and then hot tar put in. So that requires a considerable amount of time and presence to do. And what we find is that when there are multiple potholes on a road surface, you want to get out there and you want to deal with the issue as quickly as you can, because you do get complaints, you get people with claims because they've gone through potholes. So with the weather conditions, so through the winter, if you get a wet day, and whatever you're going to do, it's really not going to last unless it's cut out and put down in dry weather. That's the reason the guys will go out with whatever materials available to them. Sometimes all they have available to them is coal tar, because the tar pumps not up and running all the time. So we can either leave them until we've got hot tar, by which time people will not be happy that the hole is getting bigger. So I can assure you that if there was a way that the roads team could go out and do a permanent repair first time, they would do it. It's just the fact that the weather conditions, materials available, location, how many potholes there are on a specific location. It's not ideal, but it's what we have to work with.
Okay.
With regards to surface dressing, last year wasn't a great year weather-wise, and working in wet conditions doesn't work. So you can see the effects of it in the areas that you've talked about. So these people have a decision to do when with all that plant mobilised. Do we try to do what we can rather than just pack up everything and waiting for a number of dry days? It's very difficult. So they try their best to work sometimes between showers. There will be some repair works done to these areas this year in the next few weeks before all the plant is deployed down to Barra for 3 weeks, where 90% of the surface dressing budget will be spent this year. And that's following some pre-repair work down there as well. So hopefully that answers your question. We can't always do what we would like to.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I've had a couple of over the past couple of months. I've had 2 people in the same area who had to replace tyres on their car. And it's just, it's the same kind of area. So a more permanent fix would be good, but we can only do what we can. Thanks, Cal.
Kenneth?
Hi. As you mentioned there, Barra's getting a good amount of work done to it now, which is good, and thank you. It's just 2 areas. One of them you already know about, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring them up, because one of them submitted a petition for Cleatch, really needs looked at. The edge of the roads are crumbling in sections, and there's grass bursting through the middle of other sections. The other one, which hasn't actually been brought to me by anyone, but I'm sure it will if I don't get ahead of it, is Elgrave village itself. We now have 3 campsites there in a relatively small village, and as I'm sure you know, the distillery is now in construction. That road has shown significant issues over the years just with the campers, but now with the addition of a distillery going there, I think that road's going to need looking at sooner rather than later. Just highlighting, not as much questions, just noting. Thank you.
Taplat Chaich, Kishtik Dinis Biela.
Thanks again, Chair. I mean, I'm not a member of your committee. I think the discussion on roads forms part of the bigger argument that we're going to have to take forward to Scottish Government with regard to the renewables developments that we're getting over the next few years here. The fact of the matter is we're not going to be able to cope in terms of replacing road infrastructure, in terms of planning, in terms of possibly ferry capacity, etc. There's a major, I don't know, the figures vary between 2 billion and 6 billion investment coming to these islands over the next 4 or 5 years. And I don't think it's been particularly well thought out by Scottish Government on the impact it's going to have on our small Comhairle and our ability to cope with the damage that's going to get done to our infrastructure. And I think it's incumbent upon the leader and the chief executive to make the case at COSLA and to Scottish Government, and hopefully we've got a Scottish Government election coming up, and maybe our new prospective candidates can fight with this as part of their campaign pledges. But we need help with what's going to be happening here over the next 4 or 5 years, or we simply won't be able to cope because we don't have the mechanism on the levers to extract the money in either compensation or remuneration from these big companies for the infrastructure damage that's going to happen, whether we like it or not. So we certainly need to make the case at Scottish Government that something needs to be done here to support us, because the recovery from the damage to the infrastructure, the costs cannot be borne by us. We need some mechanism to get that money to help us put things back to the way they were, because we're not struggling just now. Well, Calla, you've known better than anybody. We can't basically keep up with where it is and the repairs we've got to do on a yearly basis. We're falling behind year on year. I mean, if I said to you just now, put back the roads to the way they were in 2010, you'd probably need £100 million. So I don't know where we're going to get the money from unless we do get support from SG on this, because it's fairly obvious that the size of this project, the projects that are getting foisted upon us, are going to damage our island infrastructure. And every committee, I think, will be bringing the same message to the leader and the chief executive to go away with and take this to Scottish Government and say, listen, we need support with this. And at the end of the day, without it, we are not going to be able to cope.
It is part of the briefing to the Deputy First Minister's visit in May. So the point I think has been made, Councillor McDonald.
The points have been, are being, and will continue to be made, and those of you who were present at the informal meeting last night heard me allude to these points. Local authorities across Scotland need considerable assistance through national strategy to deliver some of these developments. Otherwise, there is a risk that even for consented projects, we will become blockers, not enablers, because we lack the resources to do that, and that is understood. But of course, there's a difference being understood and resource following. But these issues are high on everyone's agenda. Again, part of the work which we'll discuss at Policy and Resources Committee this afternoon is seeking your authority not to decide, because it's part of corporate strategy, but to take forward these arguments more strongly, particularly around issues that are specific to the Western Isles, such as Crown Estate revenues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick observation just now on cost of material. Are we held at ransom through one supplier for hot tar on the island, given they're having to close a tar plant regularly? Are we charged premium rates compared to what to buy it in on the mainland? Just an observation. We are looking at cost effectiveness at the moment.
We don't have a framework contract because we don't have the levels of spend we used to have for road surfacing material. So whenever we're doing a large scale project, we will go to the market and seek a price for the provision on the lane of the material. The prices have been going up every year for the past number of years, and some of them quite significantly, because the cost of energy, cost of natural materials as well. So that's what we have locally. We have nothing more than the suppliers that we have on the market that we have. We have brought in material from Skye, from Oban to into Euston Barra. So we've got the market we have. We tender for a price when we've got work to do. So I suppose that's the only real response I can provide there. Whether we could get it, the difficulty with hot tar is its transport and keeping it hot until this point of laying. So we do have to take loads from Stornoway down to Barra, for instance, and sometimes we have to take them from multiple directions to be able to lay a good area at one time. But I think the point you're making, Councillor Morrison, is that there is a limited market for it, and not having it available all the time does hamper operations. But it's a very costly item of equipment to run and maintain, and especially to maintain.
Well, I was just wondering per ton, for hot tar, we know how much we're paying more for, well, say, to do a mile of road of overlay compared to mainland roads.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly get these figures for you.
Okay, thanks.
Biela. En hier, maar we uw commenteren boeilijk kundig is wel weg 3 punten hun. Ja, dat beleef. Kuspere Sheikh planigen lenten nog graag. Naast zo zo'n visserige kiezen we in een reënig lenten nog graag is van Comhairle. En de peper in de zuiden en de duiven die lenten is graag is, die uit in SharePoint. Wie niet kalmer kan ik zo naast juist fixen kisten ze mee.
Thank you, Chair. The paper shot in front of you. Well, rather than going through all of these lines, I'll just take any questions from any members if there's any concerns with any of them.
Istig Dennis B is Cusper Shach. En Neil, but a velu je committee over Puyla Kunde Huganas Gorst Fanier. Ja, I believe. Cusper Hoch, Pisrige no Hellevision Reenig Scuttle. En na shot er Pisrige me Hellevision Reenig Scuttle. Aus het dorst Emmerug et Comhairle en Emmergie Scuttle. Die column official is an ask aus fixie gisten to me. Column.
Thank you, Chair. The report details the draft waste strategy at Appendix 1. This will replace the Comhairle's 2012 strategy, and it will incorporate the two remaining actions from that strategy that require attention, namely the biodegradable municipal waste ban and the extended producer responsibility payments. It also considers future changes in the waste landscape, which are incorporated into the consultations mentioned in this report. So the main points are the upcoming waste ban. The report and strategy detail the issues around this and potential solutions. There is a new treatment system to be installed in Benbecula, which will primarily be used to deal with the Euston Barra waste, but we are going to trial a small quantity of the Lewis and Harris waste in it to see if the technology can be used in Lewis in the future to help deal with the ban. It is still likely that initially waste from Lewis and Harris will have to be transported to mainland energy from waste plants, and we are progressing this tendering exercise. The tendering exercise is necessary to facilitate this. Irrespective, it will cost a lot more to dispose of island waste in the future. And related to that, we've got the Comhairle has been given an estimate of how much we will receive from the new extended producer responsibility scheme for packaging. It is estimated at 3.4 million for 25-26, but the final amount will only be confirmed later in the year, and it may be dependent on how much the scheme administrator collects from the producers. So we'll have a better idea. I think that the first payment will be in October for that. So that's the main kind of bits related to the strategy and ourselves. The rest of the report deals with consultations, and rather than going through them all, the main points that are coming up from that are there's a consultation to review the rural food waste exemption and the approach is to continue to apply the exemption to the islands. Again, textiles, there is a question whether curbside collection of textiles should be mandatory, and our approach will be to recommend no based on the cost benefits of the current systems. Now, the islands have historically had a good network of charity collection points, but these have unfortunately closed recently. So we're looking at options to kind of see if solutions can be found to kind of re-establish them. And the last one is Scottish Landfill Fund. With the kind of landfill ban, there's been a significant reduction in material being landfilled, resulting in significantly less landfill tax and benefits from that. So in its current state, the Scottish Landfill Fund is not viable, and the Scottish Government are consulting on its future. So there is draft responses for most of the questions to the consultation detailed in the report, and we're liaising with colleagues in the Community Engagement Unit to see if there are viable local alternative approaches that could be considered compared to the Scottish Landfill Fund. So any viable alternative approaches will be included within the response. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, tak laat column weer testig Dennis B. Ronald, Eilean, Ronald.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Fraser, for this report. I note within it that we are making preparations for the biodegradable municipal waste ban, which is to come into effect on the 1st of January next year. Now, I see at paragraph 6.4 in the report, it states that there's a potential for an extension of this upcoming ban coming into effect. Firstly, can I ask if we at the Comhairle are petitioning for this outcome at present? And in your own opinion, what time frame is needed for the site at Benadrove to be equipped for dealing with the volumes of this type of waste produced in Lewis and Harris?
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, there isn't any kind of allowance for extending the upcoming ban. The only thing that we're looking at that may help in the future is if the technology being used in newest works, we could continue to landfill the waste arising from that technology at Benadrove, but that will not be in place for the 1st of January. So I think we will have to. The noises from Scottish Government and SEPA is that there is no possibility of extending the deadline.
Ronald?
Thank you for that, Chair and Colm. And secondly, in your own opinion, if it is possible, what time frame do you think is there a potential for the site at Benadrove to be in a position where it could be equipped to dealing with this type of waste for the needs of Lewis and Harris?
Chair, there is capacity currently at Benadrove landfill site, and there is plans for a new cell, so there shouldn't be any issues with the current capacity in the short term. If this technology works and we are allowed to continue to landfill and waste there, then it may be a consideration for future development of cells.
Thank you for that.
Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions I have, just following on from Councillor Fraser's response regarding the BMW ban. I know that this could probably strain ferry capacity and impact businesses. So I was wondering, is there data being collected to assess the risk, and how will the CORLA support the affected sectors like the construction industry and the hospitality sectors? That's my first question.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There has been discussion with CalMac, and there is capacity for the volume of waste at the moment, so that should be okay. The ban covers primarily waste collected through the CORLA's refuse collection vehicles. That's what's covered. So construction waste and other waste can still go to landfill, and other commercial waste. So it only covers specific waste. We've got that. We've got the kind of volumes for that, and we have plans in place to deal with that. So it shouldn't directly impact on them at the moment. There may be an increase in cost for the disposal in commercial charges, but that will be for the 26-27. We'll incorporate that into the 26-27 charges.
Gordon?
Okay, I was going to... Sorry if you give me a second. It was just in light of potential changes like the DRS scheme and textile collection. I wondered how will the CORLA engage communities to promote waste reduction and recycling behaviours to ensure that public support and compliance?
Colm?
Thank you, Chair. We will be, I mean, obviously the deposit return scheme was going to be introduced previously, and it's now planned for 2027. There will be plenty of kind of comms around that from Scottish Government and other agencies, and we'll kind of participate with the communications for that to encourage consumers to use the scheme. Obviously, there will be a financial incentive for consumers to use it, because I think it's still about 20 pence per container that they'll have to pay and get back. Sorry,
thanks a lot. Yeah, that was it. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Dennis Biela. En heel boeilijk kundig in de molly en ek 3 pointe hun. Dag bleef. Cwsper yn lwch carapat yn glani as ŵr. A now si de gunde de kniaf carapat glani strate a chanoch. Agus si de gunde carapatan agus inolan television glani a chanich tro ieset en mal so vuin spini en taramat keimel is an aisge agus ficti kisten se be. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report details the plan to replace the precinct sweeper. There's also detail in there about how this has come about, and the options we looked at before going for the offer we had from a demonstrator machine, which we were offered at a considerable saving over the new list price. The The report also details information in relation to some cleansing vehicles which have been subject to a number of discussions at this committee historically in relation to the ERCV, the fully electric bin lorry that was we obtained through part of the funding given from the RIF funding for extension of recycling collections to every household in Lewis and Harris. The vehicle has been fraught with issues since it came, and it continues to be assessed and repaired by the manufacturer with the intention that it would back into service in the coming months, fully functional. But on the back of that, there's also detail in relation to another vehicle we've had, which has had some issues, and the ERCV and that diesel-powered vehicle both share the same body from a manufacturer that is no longer in business. So we're looking at the potential to rebody one of these vehicles with an alternative body, which could be a rotor press, which would give us the flexibility for that vehicle to be used both here in Lewis or also down in Euston Barra. I'm happy to take any questions anybody has, and if members wanted to speak to me afterwards, I'm happy for that also. Thanks.
Ramet.
Stupid
How
question, buddy, yeah.
rang with you?
Is the £85,000 vehicle the wee box the size of a fridge that goes round the town in the middle of the day, middle of a Sunday?
That is the very vehicle. I mean, the cost of vehicles has increased dramatically, you know. It is, you know, and that's one of the things that's mentioned in there as well in relation to where we are and what we were previously paying for vehicles, you know, 12 months ago to where we are just now. And with the way things are at the moment, we're probably looking at increased costs moving forward yet again.
Reicht het mikkel kist te beheerden, ze wel boeilijk kundig.
Just thinking about the Scotland Excel framework, our companies get on there, surely they're vetted and due diligence done, and here we have a company we've spent considerable money with that probably within less than 2 years has gone to the wall. Is there any comeback with the Scotland Excel framework? Or
thank you, Councillor. We have been backwards and forwards a number of times with Scotland Excel and with Scottish Government, Zero Waste Scotland also in relation to particular the electric vehicles, as was the Zero Waste Scotland funding that paid for that. The company was taken over by 2 other manufacturers, and the takeover that they've had is on parts and servicing. They have not taken over any warranty claims, so there's no liability on them for that.
oh, well, just I would have thought we'd have some comeback with the Excel framework itself, but
no,
At the moment, no. There is many other refuse collection providers in the UK that have had bodies of this nature that are in a similar situation to ourselves as well.
okay.
Okay, gaan we met dinges meer, dus wel boeilijk kundig in de modder en ik type in je heun. Ja, daar staat dat in. Maar goed, per poosje kallie en bergje hier hometi in guspere lennis na glistenis maar worst na kallie. Bergje zijn in de naast sanolisch a ga kusperen tiamer ek vastgevige hun agus ga behoor bergje en zijn sanolisch het bergje vastgevige hun ek ding de kunjo maar we zijn dichter maar. Jo kuspere teich an asho is an fistrugu a dorspanier ask en ech enemichte is son waars dawiele kokerichet uit dini kalmakenich is an ask is fikti kisten se be.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you is the regular report highlighting the latest inspections from Nash Maritime, who are our designated person in respect of the Port Marine Safety Code. What I won't go into detail on the report. I'm happy to take questions on it, but the positive side for the Harbour Board and this committee is that remained compliant with the Port Marine Safety Code. The designated person did, though, ask me to highlight to you that we don't have bylaws at our ports and harbours to regulate its use. We do have directions which we use. He would, in some ways, recommend that in the future we look at bylaws, but at this point in time, it's not something that we have enough guidance on, even at government level. So, as far as the Harbour Board is concerned, our decision at this point is not to look to develop bylaws for our harbour areas. I'm happy to get any other further questions on the report, Chair.
Okay, stick things be Ian.
Yeah, looking at 3 on the report there, the camper van parking at Wilderness. It's quite clear he was disturbed with that after the incident of Boydsville. I drove past there yesterday morning and they were still there. We're not monitoring it, or is nobody ensuring that doesn't happen again?
We have been in touch with the people that are putting the camper vans there and the caravans there. I suppose, going to my last point about bylaws and enforcement, I suppose that would be the legal way of enforcing it. But I would hope that by stressing the implications to the people that are parking there, that we could persuade them. So we will undertake some further persuasion from that account. But it does highlight the severity of what can happen in such an area when you look at the Loch Boysil example.
Just, and God forbid should it happen there again, and we've ignored it, as this committee is the Harbour Board, we'd all be liable.
But hasn't your Steve go calm back to Michael?
Lever.
Gan a 3 húsin, agus as sin is bíniu to Michael, or a koi aster, vi etter na caravans na hati, gwymwysyd sé Commander Phillips in your screw to go Loch Bows till heen, agus va korek patekin, ish to Michael show, ha is show hooker de calm back.
Okay, yeah, I take that on board. If we've written to them,
yeah,
we've got that evidence.
Oh, hey, and the do something Galak,
absolutely. Thanks.
Segú noch chi.
Sta hyd sy'n chyd nod ydych chi. Da hyd dynnu clachga caravan na sy'n ysyn. Fi iawn agos sy'n yn o'i sasa. Sy'n mar fford. Fi'n cyd gael sy'n gan yw'n lest yn y sacod ac e.
Yw'r sy'n?
Yeah. Fi sy'n eto oes. Fi, yeah. Diolch fwy'n yw noch chi.
Sorry, I would hope to have the discussion with CalMac to see an improvement anyway, but we could say we don't want any caravans or camper vans on the pier at all.
Well, Suleiman, that sy'n gan yw'n mesur cwnnwyd yn edrych cael sy'n mi gyrwyd ha Mr. Phillips yn y byd anw. Alna mesur cwnnwyd yn sy'n rwyd am eisiau ffyn gyda ha coda gyn i chwyded o'r dysion da biad tahord. Agus ha sy'n y syrig sy'n y mat ford gael sy'n y chwyd nad sy'n hanil sy'n y ddianw sy'n dyn i fe catlig ydan. Afon sy'n y chai chwyd nad sy'n hi da. Agus ma ha cael mac sy'n dyn i lwc up brach gysyn y fi. Hanil at, mae'n helat y ffwydwch e bod na mele at ffwydwch ac esyn yelan. Agus gyrru camper vans na fod mae sy'n y hac. Fi gada gan lwc up brach ac y hyn sy'n we keinich galat savelte van Heinja.
Met de dag is gegloosig at kortuine sin Eilean heen vi steekt in de hasken kujugen nog is als je niet wist het zo'n chance van immertig bleven. Ha het je niet juist mijn wen. Ha dolla katerana als je een kleine niet erheen gepakt. Ja. Oh, het. Are you hearing the translation? Ah, oh, you're behind the times, yeah. Ga je kistig de Eilean maar hier en Callie en Ashek en Raniel, blijven. Wil boeilijk kundige gemaakt kost van jaar. Ja. Ik kuspere hun die graad aan de dien waar ik dit in de konju agus maar zijn kloosjes in kuspere ga hier als ik een haast die heen. Agus zijn is zo'n visserig. Kistig de is bij Raniel, blijven. Het is een echt aan de dien waar ik bergige kuspere hun die ik behoort te worden de hommetje agus de hoffeke in emmerige voeier. Agus hier in de lucht compaast ele a chunju akel.